gosh, there's a bunch more people than last year. Okay, so I bet a bunch of those people didn't, or I bet a bunch of you didn't get your goals done because you weren't here last year. All right, so bear with me. I never do PowerPoint presentations because they're hard and awkward and they make me very self-conscious. So I thought I'd learn something new and try it out, but it's making me feel awkward and self-conscious. So here we go. How many of you keep lists? How many of you know where all your lists are? Do you use Post-its and the back of envelopes and random half sheets of paper and all that stuff? Do you find you can't finish everything on your list because you can't find the list? That happens a lot. So the presentation is called How to Get Twice as Much Done with Less Hassle, just by knowing a better way to keep your lists and use them as a productivity tool, not just a way to dump stuff out of your brain, although that is part of it. So I'm actually a certified professional organizer. That's what the CPO is. That means I sat for a test to learn how to teach you guys, which I'm kind of proud of right now because I just won a cease and desist situation over that. So that was fun. So I learned how to make better slides this time, but I never could figure out how to make it for the split screen of this absurd setup. So we're going to learn about that all the information you need to be productive, you can keep on lists of various styles. And just by knowing the different day and by using your lists. So a list is actually just a series of items that are related in some way. That's all. So a to-do list typically isn't very related. It's just stuff you have to do. But if you start relating them, you're going to be more productive automatically. Should probably keep this out of the way. So you want to define the different kinds of tasks and the different kinds of thoughts that float through your head and that you end up putting on a list. There's the ideas, which is anytime something occurs to you, oh yeah, I should do that, I should check that out, that might be something, maybe I should do that, I need to check in with so-and-so. All those thoughts are really just ideas. And you need a place to capture those so they don't junk up your brain. So having a specific spot, which I call a master list, is a great place to put ideas. Some people have a lot of ideas. Entrepreneurs, like most of you in this room, probably have a gazillion ideas. I've taken my master list from a piece of paper I used to keep on my desk to a moleskin notebook because I have so many ideas. But you just need a place to capture the bigger ideas and those wandering ideas as well. Routine items are the things you write down like laundry, take kids to school, wash car, go to the grocery store, file taxes, call clients, do my payroll. Those things are routine items that you do regularly with some sort of frequency, and those need to be on a different list, out of your general to-do list, but layered in on the bottom. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the layering part in a minute. To-do tasks are actually one-off things that you need to do it to move a project forward, or something occurred in your day-to-day life that you need to get done. It usually doesn't have as much frequency of repetition as your routine items. It might happen a few times a year, it might happen once a week, but it's something that's kind of more temporary, and so you don't want to necessarily develop a habit around it. You may need to return an item to UPS, something you ordered, it wasn't right. That doesn't happen every single time you order something, it happens occasionally. You may have to pick someone up at the airport because they had a trip. Those kinds of things are to-dos. Or some client asked you to do something for them that's outside of your usual realm and you went ahead and did it, or you have to pick something up. You know, those kinds of things, those are to-do tasks. And that's the kind of thing that gets added onto an actual to-do list for your day. It's the kind of thing you need a reminder for, something you wouldn't remember because it's unusual, but it has to get done. Then there's scheduled events. And many people write scheduled events on their to-do list as well, but scheduled events are things that you know ahead of time. They have a time, a place. Sometimes the people involved are the same. So those are a different layer on your list, but they're scheduled and they have to happen, so it's a commitment. And I watch a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs with a lot of ideas, and should I do this, should I do that, I don't know how to prioritize. Mix up the fact that a scheduled event can be overscheduled with something that feels more important. So think of a scheduled event as a commitment. Something you have told someone else you're going to do, you've given your word, and if you don't show up, you have broken your word. It's not like, oh, no big deal, they'll understand. Maybe they won't. What if you left your kids at the movie theater because you forgot to pick them up? Would they understand that calling that client was more important? I don't know, maybe. But that's the kind of thing, people break those commitments all the time, especially with themselves. So do you have a scheduled workout? And then someone calls and you go, oh yeah, well, it's just my workout, I'll break that. Well, that's a commitment to yourself you've just broken. How is that good? How is that gonna help you be more productive? Now you just feel like a miserable loser because you can never work out. But you did it to yourself because you broke your own commitment. That's why they say put those time blocks in your calendar so that you can actually get things done and be productive. If you honor your commitments, you will show up at the right place at the right time and do the right thing. The other stuff above that, the ideas, the routines, the tasks, those get sprinkled on over the commitments. That's why they say when grouping errands, you save time. It's because you are kind of scheduling an event to go run errands, and you go run all your errands and you group them together, and then it's done in a certain block of time. Not, oh, I should go to the grocery store now, and then I'll go home and I'll work on some stuff, and then I'll go get the dry cleaning, and then I'll go home and work on some other things, and then I'll go pick up the kids, and then I'll go work out, and then I'll go back to the office and do some more stuff tonight. That's just a waste of time. You're driving back and forth and changing gears way too often. Just go drop the kids off at school, go to the grocery store, go to the dry cleaner, go work out, go home, then work. It's much faster. Save about an hour a day doing that. All right. So keeping your list safe. I hit on this in the beginning about if you keep all your lists in the same place. A few of you said they're scattered, but most of you said that you keep them all in the same place. So where do you keep them? Where do you keep your to-do lists?
Phone.
Phone? Do you use the Notes app? Do you use Evernote? Do you use Todoist? Do you use Trello? So one of the things people always want to know is what app can I keep my lists in? It does not matter. One iota, what kind of calendar you use, what kind of paper you use, or what kind of app you use. What matters is that you use it. So whatever one makes sense to your brain is the one you should use. I keep it simple. I use reminders for my agendas, and I use notes for the random to-do lists. But most of my to-dos are actually in my calendar because they are scheduled. So the agendas are routine things. I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. The commitments actually get a time in the calendar, but anything I need to do on a certain day or that I plan to do on a certain day gets put in as an all-day task. So it's listed in my calendar, on my calendar page. So I can access it from my computer or my phone, or whatever. But I'm a paper gal. I found that I would forget to look at the calendar if I didn't have it to jot a couple notes or doodle on while I was thinking. So I take my notes and I put them into the calendar on my paper calendar, and I use a Moleskine week at a glance situation. But the same thing works on the electronic. For some reason my brain just doesn't process it right that way, so I use a combo situation. And part of it is it turns into a safe place to keep those ideas and those thoughts. If you have them scattered all over the place, I have taking pictures of my clients' stacks of to-do lists, because I went to one client, and I'm not kidding you, it was like 18-inch pile of papers with lists on them. And they all said to-do list, to do on this date, to do list, to do, stuff to do list. And none of them had more than one thing crossed off of them, which means she spent all that time rewriting and then looking for yesterday's list to make sure she covered it, which she didn't because she couldn't find the list, and stuff was piling up in other areas as well. So if you think of where you keep your notes as the safe place, you know where to look when you have an idea, or some connection is made, when you're out in the community and you make an introduction to someone and you go, oh yeah, that would help with this, you know where those ideas and those tasks are, or where to cross something off because it automatically happened when you weren't thinking about it. Which is another great thing about to-do lists. When you actually write things down, physically write them, it helps your brain remember them as well. So it's a repetitive thing. Does not happen when you do it electronically. They aren't sure why, but it's a thing. So when they are important, or every day, you might want to write down your 3 most important things so you don't forget them. But we'll get more into the details of that later. So I've mentioned all these different kinds of lists. The master list is where you brain dump everything you can think of that you need to do, take care of, everything. You just dump it. And I recommend anytime you're feeling overwhelmed to do a brain dump master list. This is the one that you can do every once in a while and just make sure you're covering your bases and that things haven't changed. It's also a really good way to then look at again, and the first thing you want to do is go through it and cross off anything you don't absolutely have to do. Because stuff lingers, and if anything's lingering, for entrepreneurs it's a little bit longer. When I had an actual job that I could leave at 5 o'clock and go home, anything that lasted more than 3 weeks, I'm like, I'm never going to do that, and it would go. But now that I'm an entrepreneur, my time frame is a little bit different. And so things linger a little bit longer. But if you can regularly think more along the lines of what can I get away with not doing, instead of look at all this stuff I have to do, you're going to just feel less overwhelmed and a little more in control of what you're doing. And if you tune those, what do I want to do, against what you actually want to achieve in your life, like what is the desired outcome you want from running your own business or living the life you're living? What is it you want out of your life? And you tie your tasks and your desires and all these things to that, you're much less likely to not do them because it's getting you what you want. Take all those shoulds and obligations off the list by just crossing them out. You'll feel a sense of accomplishment too. Because it turns out when you check something off, it feels to your brain like you've actually done it. So people lie to themselves all the time, and they check things off that they didn't actually do. It forms a little bit of a feedback loop. And when you're rewriting it because you didn't do it, it also provides feedback of, I'm a loser, I didn't do the thing. So having them in one place kind of takes all those little things that are chunking away at your self-esteem off of the table, and then you're more likely to get stuff done again because you feel good and accomplished and you know you're in control of your stuff. Routines. These are chores. These are the things you do every day. There's no need to rewrite these every day. They become habits and they go into your subconscious, so you don't really have to think about them as much. You don't have to brush teeth every morning once you have learned it. For the kids, you do. You have to put the stars on the chart and all that. But once you know that you're supposed to brush your teeth every day, you don't have to write that as a to-do, and yet it is. Make your coffee, take a shower, start the car, whatever those things are. Create as many routines and habits as you can, because then you're not using prime creative energy to do the stuff that you need to just live your life. But what you can do is create agendas, which is a list of tasks about something. So at home, for instance, if you're trying to teach your teenagers how to take care of the kitchen, you're going to wash the dishes by rinsing them, putting them in the dishwasher, wiping down the counter, putting the food back in the fridge, and taking out the trash if it's full, or whatever your set of tasks to get your kitchen done is. And then they can use it as a checklist until it becomes a habit. You can check up on them to make sure they did it. And as entrepreneurs, that's the way we delegate tasks to new hires, to assistants, to a VA, to a coworker. By knowing what the steps are in the task that need to happen, they can learn to do the task and you can keep an eye on them. And all you have to do is hand them the list. Try this, see what happens. Frees up time, becomes habit for you, for them, and you have a checkup system. So routines can be all kinds of things. I don't know, everyone know who Chris Brogan is?
Not really.
Some people? Okay, he's a business coach. He has a system he calls action stacks. And that's exactly what routines are. You create the list of what are the steps I do every time I write a blog and post a blog post. What are the steps I do every time I do a Facebook Live? What are the steps I do every time I run a meeting? And he creates just little checklists of those, and so he spends 20 minutes and he pulls up that one for the day and follows those steps and then puts it away. So you can create those little routine checklists at any point, anytime, next time you're doing the task, and then review it a few times. Sometimes when you think you know all the steps for something, you don't. So I recommend next time you do it, write down what you think you're going to be doing, and then actually do it and fill in the holes and update it, and then do it a few more times to make sure other weird exception things don't show up for the list. And then by then it's usually pretty much a habit and you don't need to refer to it that often. Specifically though, it works really great on things you do occasionally, like how you file your quarterly taxes or how you change out your system at the end of the year to update all the paperwork and forms that need to have a date change on them for your business. Stuff like that. Those occasional things, a checklist and routine list for that is really helpful as well. Agendas are kind of like a checklist, but they're a temporary checklist. So think about it in terms of people that you have to touch base with regularly or you have regular meetings with. It can be people in your family, it can be friends, it can be coworkers, it can be employees or bosses. And you just make a page or a note for each of those people, and every time you think, I've got to talk to them about such and such, jot it down on there. And then the next time you see them or meet with them, you have a quick little list of 2 or 3 things you wanted to talk to them about. And you get it all done without having to make 6 different phone calls over 2 different weeks. And then, oh yeah, did I tell you about the... You just know that it's on the next step. It works really great for working with independent contractors too, to just make sure who's doing what. Did I actually tell you about that, or did I just think about it? You can use the agenda for that. Really handy. The Reminders app in the iPhone works really great. You can do it in Evernote, Trello, whatever your app of choice is. Agendas are good. Tasks are those one-off things. And I've been trying to think who it was. I think it was Jack Canfield talked about how he started getting more done by writing the top 3 priorities for his day on a Post-it note. And someone in the audience said, well, I fit a lot more on my Post-it note. And he's like, no, I use the little ones, little 1 by 2s or whatever they are. If you use the smaller one, you can't fit more on it. And so you're less likely to overschedule. So it's just 3 every day. I usually have it stuck on the base of my computer. Every day I just pick the 3 most important, and those 3 happen first, and then everything else happens. It's not always necessarily the most difficult, like eating the frog first or starting with the easiest to get motivated and get started. It's the 3 most important. Sometimes it's as quick as shooting off an email. Sometimes it's as complicated as finishing my presentation slides. So, it depends on what it is, but you get to pick which are the 3 most important. And again, if you know why you're working for things, what your wants are, you're more likely to know what's important versus what's not. We waste a lot of time these days on social media. Hello, Facebook Live. But we have not always know who's on the other side watching and if they're the people that you want to be reaching. And yet we spend a lot of time doing that. I actually get more clients by picking up the phone and making phone calls and going, hey, do you want to get organized this week? Than I do with all my social media combined. So just know where you're getting your customers and if it's a good point to be doing that much time on social media just to be hip and cool or whatever. For some of you it will be, because that's your market. For me, it's not. So tasks, again, because they're one-offs, they're hard to determine the amount of time they're going to take. So you need to just factor that in as well. It's probably going to take you longer than you thought, although occasionally it's going to take less. All right. So when you plan your day, the layering of your day, what am I going to do? You have to consider the things that you are committed to, the scheduled things. So you're going to the doctor, you're going to the gym, are you picking up your kid for a special treat? Are you having a meeting with an investor? What are the commitments? Those are first. Those are the priority things. The second things are the routine things, because everyone thinks they cannot do their routine things and still run their life and not have things fall through the cracks. What you can do is shorten the amount of time you spend on the routine things or do them a little less perfectly, but you still need to do them. If I decide everything is more important than writing my blog, I don't do a blog post for 8 months, which happened earlier this year. It was like, what am I doing? I'm not taking my own advice. And it was like, blog writing just stopped for a while because I was out of it and I wasn't in the routine. It's easier to do things 100% of the time than it is to do them 90% of the time, because exceptions trip you up. So as much as possible, even when you travel, try to keep your routine as close to what it is at home as possible. I know that sounds crazy, but that's because you guys think all those things that you're not actually doing as routine items are your routine. That's not your routine. I'm talking about your self-care, your minimum amount of reach out to your clients and employees and things like that. Those are the routine things. Okay, does that make sense? Does anyone have? Okay, good. Sometimes people are like, what are you talking about? Theme days are the next way I like to layer the schedule. Oh, one more thing about routines. If you use something like Chris Brogan's action stacks for your routine items, you can get everything, like your minimum effective dose of work done at work or at home or both in about 2 hours, because that's 6 action stacks at 20 minutes. So every day I review my calendar, check my email, double check my money situation and pay bills or whatever needs to happen. I make my most important phone calls, and I do social media reach out. 2 hours, 6 action stacks every day. And you can split them up. They don't have to happen back to back, but you can run a business in 2 hours a day if you do that. 3 hours if you want to do anything more than the minimum effective dose. Okay. Themes are a focus for the day. So if you have a bunch of tasks on that master list and you're like, how do I get those done? This is how you get those done. You have a theme. If you're a podcaster, you do your interviews on Wednesday and you do the editing and uploading on Thursday. If you are a blogger, you write on Tuesday and post on Wednesday and promote on Thursday. I have different themes. I have Mondays are money. So even though I check on my money every day, I do any extra or coordinating or improvements on the money situation on Mondays. Tuesdays are marketing. So I do a lot of networking and writing and learning. It's kind of marketing and education. So I also take classes on Tuesdays. Wednesdays are client work. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are clients. So I have a client every day, and I know when to schedule them because I work with clients on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. You know, there's no, oh yeah, Friday, no. How about next Tuesday? So it helps on a lot of different levels to have theme days. Thursdays are projects, so any bigger projects that I have to do research or learning to move it forward, coordinating. I work mostly on Thursday on that. And Friday is catch-up. So I'll go in a little more to the catch-up day in a minute. Coaching and catch-up. So projects, though, are, say you want to do a new website. You want to have that as your last layer. So the theme is to get your important stuff done. The stuff takes a little longer than 20 minutes. You need like an hour, 90 minutes, maybe 3 hours occasionally for some focused work on the important things. Things that'll move you and your business forward longer term. Projects are the projects that make that happen as well. So it's, the theme might be the planning of it or whatever, and then the next day you can start it as the project. And projects should be worked on in what do they call it, Scrum or sprints. You work on it in every available time left in your day until that project is done. And if you do it sequentially, like I'm gonna do everything I can to get the blog done, and you do that, and then you have a new blog and updated and theme, and it's all pretty, and it's connected to the website all just right, and to all the social media just right, and then you're done with that, you can move on to the next project. And so some of these things are gonna take 1 day, some are gonna take 3 days, some are gonna take 3 weeks. Some might take 6 weeks if you're launching a big new program. Some might take longer, but you use every available extra minute to work on that thing until it's done, and then you work on the next thing. People slow down and get unproductive when they start working on 12 of those things at the same time. You're gonna finish more faster if you do them sequentially. Does that make sense? it's hard to remember to do that. And I have found that because of the way our brains work, it's hard to keep that much focus and think other things are not falling through the cracks. So if you use the I am mapping, making, and merging theme, and I think that's from Todd Herman, who's another productivity coach. The mapping is kind of planning. So it's an important thing to plan and do some pre-planning, and you can't always start the project immediately after the plan. So if you have one project in planning mode, and one project you're actually working on, the making of, and then one that has already happened and you are evaluating how it went and how you're gonna use it in the future and if you're ever gonna do it again and that kind of thing, that's the merging. Or if it's something that's just gonna be ongoing and needs to be available for your clients or whatever from now on, what's the maintenance gonna be on that? That's the merging part. So you have one always in pre-production, one in production, and one in post-production. That kind of thought process for projects works really well. So you can be doing 3 at the same time all the time. But 2 of them will be in the, let's work on that on a theme day, and one will be, I'm all in the middle of making it. Does that make sense? Okay. Sometimes time management concepts are a little ephemeral and hard to describe. All right, so again, I talked about having your goals really clear. What is your desired outcome? What are you trying to accomplish? Knowing that, it'll happen. What does that say? Pick the next best action. That best option. So in the one thing, they talk about what is the next thing you can do that by doing it, such that by doing it, other things are no longer necessary. What's the thing that'll wipe out the need to do those other 12 things? Right? Sometimes it's, I gotta go make some money so I can pay my people. Sometimes it's, I've got to write this blog post so that I can get on that TV show or that special podcast to promote it. Sometimes it's, I need to pick my kid up from school because there's some sort of crisis going on. Sometimes it's, it's personal, sometimes it's business, but what's the next best thing you can do that other things won't be necessary? If you rehang your clothes that you only wore for an hour, you don't have to put them in the laundry. So that would be a next best action. You don't have to do laundry. What can you pick up? What can you eliminate? What clutter can go away that makes the swirling around and moving things around unnecessary? That's the kind of thing you're looking for. What if I set up this project so all these other things happen? If I release an online course, can I make enough passive income to not have to work with 2 clients? That saves me 50 phone calls a week. That means I can do something else. Whatever it is, figure out the next best action on whatever the project you're working on is. I talked about limiting the number of projects already. I just wanted to go just a little bit more in detail on the routines, because this is the place that people get it mixed up. Is this a task? Is it a routine? If you're not sure, think about